Hello friends, it's Cassie and welcome back for another Heffy Doodle video. Today we're going to be sharing the Lotta Love stamps and dies. This is special. If you pre-order right now between September 1st and September 8th, you can get that little cutie for free, and the details will be on the blog, which I will have linked down below. Then we're also going to be using the brand new Constellation prize stencil, the oldie but goodie stitched hearts die. We've got some cardstock in the colors Blueberry Bliss, Razzleberry, and Hint of Mint. And then I also have some alcohol marker friendly cardstock that we're going to be using. This is going to be a slimline, so I did cut down my Blueberry Bliss to be an 8.5 by 3.5 inch piece of cardstock. We're going to get this background going, so I'm going to pull in some Heffy tape. It's one of my favorite pieces or tools to have in my craft room. I'm going to tack it to the back of that stencil, but before I really do that, because I plan to do some embossing, we're going to use a magic powder bag. I'll stick the stencil back down on top and then use an embossing ink right over the top of that stencil so it'll seep through and make sure that I get all of those stars. Now, I wouldn't necessarily consider this stencil to be like what I call continuous, meaning you can use it on all different kinds of cards, but you can absolutely work with it to make it look like it is something continuous. And when I say continuous, I also mean like the pattern is the same. So you can just kind of move it a little bit and it'll be easy to do. I'll cover that with some white embossing powder and then kind of brush away any of the excess powder. Heat set that till that is smooth and melted. And you'll know it is because it goes from a matte finish to a shiny finish. And then we'll do the same thing to this other side. So this is where I'm going to kind of line up the stencil, see how that goes, make it look as like it's nonstop or continuous as best I can. So then we'll tack that down and do the same thing on this side. And even if it isn't perfect there in the middle, it doesn't bother me because I am going to have something that covers that middle portion. So just sticking some more of that clear embossing ink down, and then we'll cover that with that embossing powder. And then heat set that till that's smooth and melted. And this is also a really great way to get backgrounds like without having to do all the color first. So if you did this on a white piece of cardstock, then you'd have to add lots of color, but doing it on colored cardstock, you have a little less steps. This is the Razzleberry, and I used that stitched hearts die to cut out one of those. And we're going to do the same stencil on here. And then I kind of like how one of those constellations is a heart, so we'll just stick that in there. It's not probably as noticeable once all the pieces are on here, but I know it's there and it's fun. And so then again, cover that with our embossing powder. I did get a little extra embossing ink through some of those, so they're fairly thick lines, but that really doesn't bother me. So again, heat set that till that is smooth and melted. Then we'll clean up our mess, and I want to bring in some extra color because I really want to accent these edges. Just make them a little bit more interesting. So I'm grabbing this first color, which is picked raspberry, along with a blender brush that I have, and I'm just going to spread that all around the edge. And then because this is embossed, the technique of emboss resist happens, and you can wipe away the color over the top of the embossing powder. It will resist this dye ink. That next color that I used was Festive Berry, which is a little bit more red, but it really makes that pop. I'll just blend that a little better. And then once again, wipe all that away so that the constellations really pop. That white is just very stark, and I like that. All right, for our blue background, we're going to be using some chipped sapphire. So it's nice and blue, and it deepens those edges really nicely. And it's the same concept, obviously, as we did on our heart. So wherever that blue covers up the white, you can wipe it away later. That's why emboss resist is such a neat technique. And then I do want to deepen the edges just a little bit more, so I'm going to bring in some black soot. And I don't want this to be really crazy black, so I'm just kind of lightly going around the edges just to deepen it a little bit more. But it's interesting how dramatic that makes it look. And it, looks like a galaxy, which is fun. I'll wipe away the excess ink with my microfiber cloth, and then I can't stop there. I do need to add some splatter. So I'll put this in my makeshift splatter box, and then I'm bringing out this Gansai Tombi Starry Colors palette. Great for splatter. It's all like golds and silvers, mostly golds. But then I'll just splatter some of that all over that background, which doesn't look like much right now, but when I hold it up to the light, which you'll see here in a second, it adds a lot to it, and it's shiny in the light, which is of course fun too. So we'll let those dry off to the side, and then we'll do our stamping, which I'm just using some Eclipse Black Maker Forte ink. I'll stamp out my little mole Lotta Love stamps. Aren't they adorable? And I'm going with a little bit more non-traditional colors for a mole. We're using mint colors because I wanted it to tie in with the card base that I plan to use. But again, this is limited. It's only going to be available for pre-order. So if you are in love with these moles like I am, you're going to want to head to the blog and check that out. Like I said, it's linked down below. I don't own any mole stamps, so I was super thrilled to get these. So how I color, just to let you know, using alcohol markers, is I go lightest to darkest. So my first color I put up on the screen. This next one is the BG34. I think the first one was BG23. And then I come in and add my shadowing with the BG34. It kind of blends in there, so I'm going to bring in the G16. Yes, that is a green, and it does show up very green there. But when I bring back in the BG34, it softens that green up and makes it look more minty. And then it still gives that dramatic effect of shadowing. So I love that. I love grabbing colors that you might think, why would you grab green? But it actually looks pretty good with these guys. Then I'll do the same thing for the rose, just using that BG34. It's a small little piece, so I'm not real concerned about too much shadowing and shading. And then coming in with that G16 and then blending it back out. And then I did screw up on my rose. I grabbed the darkest color first because I wasn't thinking. And I meant to grab my lighter color, obviously. So try to bring in that light color and it's too late. So I will bring in a completely different, I use RV66, which adds just a little bit of depth, not a whole lot. And then for his little face, their little faces and hands and feet, I'm using C1 and C3. And I will not blend that out. I'm going to leave that, not that it's super dramatic, but I'm going to leave the edges the way that they are. And then we need to add our matching dies over the top. So I'll just tack that down with a little bit of Heffy tape and run that through my mini die cutting machine. And then we have all of our pieces ready to start putting on the front of our card. Our card base is some of that Hint of Mint cardstock that I've cut down to 7 inches by 8.5 inches, scored at 3.5 inches. And then I'm going to use some Glubert glue. That is by Heffy Doodle as well. And I added way too much to the back of that. It's fine. It only feels like it's going to buckle in the beginning, and then once it dries, everything is flat. So not a big deal. I definitely just need to learn to be a little less heavy-handed with the glue. Put the little rose on our mole, and then we'll add foam tape to the back of both of our moles and our sentiment. And then I'll peel off that release paper, and I can put them down. So it's clearly not really like a scene, but I love how that constellation is on that background, and we've got our little moles there. And then our fun little sentiment that goes along with it, sending a mole Lotta Love. And once that's done, we can attach that to our card base. Once again, using some more of that Glubert glue and trying to be a little less heavy-handed. I did better. I did do better. All right, I do need to stamp on the inside, so I'm going to grab out some Distress Oxide in the color Chipped Sapphire, and then I'll just stamp all of our little images right on the inside. Distress Oxides work great for stamping on colored cardstock or just stamping in general, but they show up really nicely and they are formulated for stamping, whereas the Distress inks themselves typically are not. So, and then that color is the Picked Raspberry. So there you have it. There is our card. I love how this turned out. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button and definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And as always, thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.